Doc Slab Audio on music production and audio engineering. Welcome to Doc Slab Audio and our 5th Master Series. I do believe this is the 11th video in our 5th Master Series, Professional Sounding Results from Your Home Studio. And in this video, we're going to talk about MIDI controllers and MIDI controller concerns. So hang on a minute and let's take a look at our MIDI controllers and what we can do with them. Okay, first of all, you should probably Google MIDI controllers. There is tons of information and tons of links to follow to get mountains of information about them. The simple things that we use them for and the complex things we use them for are fairly simple to understand, but there's lots of things that we can do with our MIDI controller. So I do not dissuade you from Googling it, searching around and spending some time understanding about them to get a really good in-depth of understanding of what all they can do, how they're constructed, and their purposes. Second of all, that when you get a MIDI controller, you really want to get a MIDI controller that's suited for what you do. There are mountains of them, but I do suggest if you're a small home studio or a small professional studio to get a good one, that because they can do a lot of different things. Spend some time researching them, spend some time finding one that's going to really work for what you're trying to do and what you see yourself doing in the future, and don't be afraid to spend a little bit of money on them, because you probably will find that if you are a producer that you will use them a lot because they are invaluable once you get to use them really well. So let's take a look at our actual MIDI controllers in the DAW. Okay, one of the first things we want to address is things like sound fonts. You can actually get editors. My DAW in Studio One actually has an editor that you can actually create sound fonts that you can drag into any of your like VST instruments, to where you can actually edit all the notes, sound sculpt the samples yourself, and then edit them any way you want to have them come out any way you want, so you can drag them into an instrument and utilize them almost. I mean, you can create everything from the ground up. It's amazing what you can do with them. The second thing we come to is, as far as your MIDI instruments are concerned, there are tons of really cool MIDI instruments. Everything from drum machines to samplers to synthesizers to, I mean, it's just unbelievable the amount of tools that they have as far as synths and things like that to create sound. And also MIDI information. I have a guitar that, it's called Magic. I can actually plug my guitar into it and it relays the MIDI information in so that I can play MIDI instruments like this keyboard with my guitar. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of stuff you can do, and there's lots of controls on a lot of the MIDI instruments that you have to really control the sound, besides what you put in them or the prefab sounds that have in them, that you can really have a lot of control of what's happening there. Besides that, we've all found one of the first things that people find whenever they're using their MIDI controllers is that sometimes it comes out sounding a little robotic, a little sterile, it doesn't quite sound humanized, and it doesn't sound real, and the controls in the editing areas in most DAWs, most good DAWs, you have mountains of control dealing with almost every aspect of the sound that comes out of this note. I mean, almost any of the notes, how they go between each other, just unimaginable. The more time you spend with it, the more time you practice with them, that it's unbelievable that you hardly never even need an actual instrument if you really refine yourself at using what's at hand and what's available whenever dealing with MIDI and MIDI instruments. It's unbelievable. So whenever you get like a MIDI controller, that the thing is that there's lots of controls on a MIDI controller to help you utilize the things that you have as far as the instruments and the editors and all kinds of things like that. So it's kind of, it's all, mixed together there. So you really want to research, what you can all do with MIDI and the sounds that you have and samplers and all kinds of things like that before you get too much into what one you would want to buy as far as a MIDI controller, because once you realize what all you can do with it, it's unbelievable that what the amount of power that you have in creating sound and having using a MIDI controller to help you input that. A lot of times the MIDI controller just inputs the notes and things like that, but there are some pretty elaborate ones that can do a lot more than that. And when you get into things like what it can do, I mean, there's lots of different options available to what's happening as you put in notes. And you can, as far as what you're putting in there on whatever instrument you're working on or whatever sound fonts or whatever, that you can add tons of different parameters to be dealing with any input that you are putting in. So, I mean, you've got all kinds of control with your MIDI controller, but before it ever even becomes MIDI information, and after it becomes MIDI information, it's almost is like its sound, that you can sculpt it in unimaginable ways. And once you get done with it and you're pretty happy with it and you're fairly much done with it, you can render it to audio, and then you can do magic with it with audio engineering, just like it's a capture from like a grand piano or a synthesizer or a vocal or a guitar or anything else. And then you can do all the stuff you can do with audio engineering that you would do to a vocal and a guitarist or anything like that, after you've transformed it into audio. So it's really amazing. The biggest thing that I say about MIDI controllers, instruments, VSTs, all that stuff, is research it. Sit down what all it can do for you. And it's just going to take some time. I can't cover everything in one video. I could make videos for the next next 2 months on this easily. I mean, it's a lot of information. And research MIDI itself. Also, the MIDI information itself. MIDI can do tons of stuff. So researching it is going to be very helpful. As small professional studio, they're invaluable tools. So just take your time, do the research, and make good purchases. Spend some money in this area is my suggestion, because of how powerful it is and what all you can do with it. Okay, so if you look on my channel, there are some playlists on MIDI and synthesizers that should be of some help to you. But the bottom line is, when you start getting into it, you're really going to want to research MIDI and the powerful tool that it is. And then you're really going to want to research MIDI controllers to have an understanding of what all that they're capable of doing for you in the studio. And when you start getting into MIDI controllers themselves, when we start talking about how does this affect how I get professional sounding results in my studio, is that first of all, the more time you spend researching these subjects to where that you can utilize tools like this well, so that you get professional sounding results instead of crap. You've got your MIDI controller and you've made a drum beat, you've made a synthesizer thing, and you've used oboes, you made a choir thing, but it all sounds horrible because you don't understand MIDI, you don't understand any MIDI information, you don't understand the editors, you don't understand the controllers, you don't understand all the things that you can do with that to get professional sounding results. So it's something you need to focus on, because once you really understand it well, the MIDI controllers themselves can do a lot for you to help you get really professional sounding results. And you utilizing the editors well and things like that, and font creation tools that you have, that it's unimaginable the amount of professional sounding results you can get, and never have a person ever pick up an instrument or sing a note. It is unbelievable once you understand that. And you just sit there with your keyboard just plunking along, having a blast, and it's amazing what you can get done. Instruments themselves that you have, VSTs. I play my guitar into my DAW, and it actually plays my VST instruments for me, and I just have a blast. I mean, it's just, and you can write like that, composition and arrangement. I mean, it's amazing. So the better you get at utilizing them, the better that they're going to function for you. And as far as professional sounding results, the better you can use your MIDI controllers at putting information in there and editing the information you have and utilizing all the tools that MIDI gives you, that you're going to get better results, better sounding results in your studio. So it's just something you really need to just dive into, because I see a lot of people get into EDM, dance music, rap, I mean, all kinds of stuff, that their MIDI controller is their best buddy, bro. Their MIDI editor and their MIDI controller is the best friend in the whole dang world, bro. But they don't spend the time utilizing it, so they get really professional sounding results. So they have the MIDI controller that works well with them, with the controls on it that are going to help them do what they do, understanding the editors, how they work together, understanding the controls that you can input, how you can change them, how you can adjust them, how you can elaborate on them. And it's just amazing. The better you get at utilizing, the better your stuff's going to sound, and you'll get much more professional sounding results in the projects you do in your home studio. So peace, self love. I certainly hope you enjoyed this next video on MIDI controllers and MIDI controller concerns, and I will see you in the next video.